Hey everybody, it's You Had to Ask, the show where I answer your questions. And this week my first question comes from Ryan Swanson, who says, Steve, I love hypothetical questions, and I hope you do too. Here's one. Hypothetically, if aliens on a planet in the Andromeda Galaxy had a telescope so powerful that it could zoom into Earth's surface, what would they see exactly? Seeing that it's 2.5 million light years away, would they actually see, in detail, our ancestors, the Homo habilis, frolicking around during the Legalization Pleistocene period? Yeah, I literally just learned those details a second ago. Yeah, that's what they would see. There's nothing hypothetical about that part of the question. That if you were looking at the Earth from a point 2.5 million light years away with a telescope that could somehow grant you that level of detail, that you could see what people are doing on the surface of the planet, yeah, that's what you would see. You would see what was happening at whatever you're looking at 2.5 million years ago. Yeah, that's what you would see. That's the way it works. And I think that is amazing. I mean, that boggles my mind. There's a story there somewhere. You know, there's a science fiction story there somewhere where someone is looking through such a telescope and is, studying the inhabitants of some, long extinct civilization by viewing the light from their distant planet through his telescope. That whole thing is just amazing to me. And when you think that there's like an ever-expanding bubble with Earth at the center of it, of radio transmissions that is reaching ever further every moment out into the universe, beginning with the very first radio transmissions ever sent and continuing on up to today, expanding at the speed of light on out into the universe with every radio transmission that has ever been sent, that is radiating out into space in all directions. An invisible bubble of basically our modern civilization going out into space for anyone who might be listening to intercept it and to hear it and to see it. That fascinates me as well. The accountable account. Hey Steve, when asked about why I don't believe in God, I usually say the same thing a lot of atheists say, the huge lack of evidence. However, it only occurred to me recently, what evidence do we require? Personal experience? The deity revealing itself? What evidence would be needed to make atheists as a whole accept the existence of a God? That is, of course, a God exists to begin with. This, of course, is nothing more than human curiosity, but it's quite interesting when you think about it. Thanks. I've made suggestions in the past of hypothetical evidence for God that, if it wouldn't completely convince me that God existed, would at least allow, let's say, Christians to make a much stronger case than they are currently able to make today. I've suggested several times in You Had to Ask videos in response to questions like this, the idea of a truly supernatural volume of scripture. Like, let's say if the Bible really was an undeniably amazing, fantastic, inexplicable book, the sort of thing where like you couldn't destroy it, you couldn't incorrectly copy it or incorrectly interpret it, even if you tried to on purpose. It was the sort of thing that, it had been passed down from generation to generation, perfectly transmitted. Every translation was clear and lucid. Every interpretation was obvious and agreed upon. You couldn't misinterpret it. You couldn't mistranslate it. Even if you tried, you couldn't destroy it, anything like that. That would be one possible evidence, something, a truly supernatural scripture. But honestly, I mean, I also kind of like what I've heard Matt Dillahunty say on this question. He's been asked, what evidence would you accept? And his answer is often something like, an omnipotent God should know what evidence would be sufficient to convince people and also be capable of producing it. And that gets at the point that I've made a few times as well, which is it's not really up to me as the skeptic to imagine what kind of evidence would be persuasive to me. And to be fair, it's not really up to Christians either. It's not up to evangelists to convince me. If God is there and he cares about whether or not I believe in him, then it's up to him to provide the evidence that convinces me. And so far, he either is not interested or is not willing, for whatever reason, to provide me with that evidence, whatever that evidence might turn out to be. Observable fiction. Hey Steve, cool channel. I want to know what you think about responsible drug use. Imagine someone who knows enough not to hurt himself or get addicted, but still uses an alarming amount of safe drugs. Without getting into the slippery slope mindset, what do you think about this? Also, kicking people off to prison for using drugs never made any sense to me. If we're worried about people hurting themselves with drugs, why aren't we helping them instead of punishing them? It seems frighteningly analogous to sodomy laws / gay illegality. I agree with you that it doesn't really do any good to toss drug addicts in prison. I think that drug addiction, drug abuse should be treated as a public health issue, and that drug addicts who want help or have shown that they need help should be given treatment, not punished like criminals. I don't think it does them any good, and I don't think it does our society any good in general to lock up drug addicts and treat them like criminals. But at the same time, I don't think that it's a good idea to just have like a widespread legalization of all drugs. Something like marijuana that has shown itself to not be as harmful as harder drugs, or at least to not be any more harmful. And in fact, an excellent case can be made that it's actually less harmful than drugs that are currently legal, like alcohol and tobacco. So that to me, I don't have a problem with. I think legalizing pot is probably going to happen at some point relatively soon, and it's not going to be that big of a deal. But legalizing harder drugs, legalizing something like meth or like heroin or like cocaine, something that is highly addictive and incredibly destructive and is now thought to serve no real constructive, useful, legitimate purpose, I really don't see what the benefit to society is of legalizing drugs like that, of making drugs like that easier for people to get. Again, I don't think the drug addicts, whether they use those drugs or some other drugs, should be treated like criminals. But at the same time, I don't think that those drugs should be made legally available to people, even in a highly regulated way like we do with alcohol and tobacco, and like I imagine we will soon be doing across the nation with marijuana. I don't think that is a good idea. Nick Grant. Hi Steve. Last year a local church had a series called Ask Anything. They took questions that were submitted online or via text and answered them during the Sunday service. I have a ton of questions that I could have asked, but I wonder what question would you have posed in order to plant the seed of doubt in the congregation? If I had to pick one, I would probably say, why specifically do you consider your church's scripture to be genuine and the scriptures of other churches to not be genuine? You know, what reason do you have for believing that the Bible is the Word of God, but the Quran is not, or the Book of Mormon is not, or the Vedas are not? That would be the question I would ask. I don't know if it would raise any doubts or if it would really do any good, but that is, I would at least be interested in hearing the answer. Dylan Olmstead. In your Off Monday ramble, you talked about how you went through a conservative phase because you listened to Rush Limbaugh, and I think that you explained that very well, so that's not what I'm asking about. What I found most interesting in that video, though, is that after showing your tripod setup in your car, you quoted Penn Jillette. That was interesting to me because I, too, went through a conservative, even libertarian phase, largely because I listened to Penn Jillette. Specifically, it was watching Bullshit. Now, I would consider myself a progressive, and I've gone back and watched some of the episodes of Bullshit that I think are bullshit. They are admittedly very biased and sometimes even seem to highlight crazy people as credible and credible people as crazy. Obviously, there are some good episodes that I agree with still, but it's weird seeing how much my opinions have changed since I first watched the show. As a side note, of course I can compartmentalize my love of Penn and Teller's stage show. I got to see it in January and got my ticket signed, which is currently on my wall just a few feet to my right, away from my disagreements with their politics. My question is, what do you think of Penn Jillette's political points, and what do you think of Bullshit? Well, Penn is a libertarian, and I'm not. So when it comes to matters of of politics, there are lots of areas where he and I disagree. I think he's great when he talks about atheism and religion, and I actually thought Bullshit was a great show. I miss Bullshit. I thought it was a breath of fresh air. The only thing I didn't really care for was the sophomoric gratuitous nudity, all of the sort of naked ladies that they would have on the show just because they could, because it was on Showtime. I thought like once or twice it was funny, but when they started doing it every single time, I just thought it got tiresome. I just thought it seemed immature and sophomoric, which is a shame because Penn and Teller's comedy show and their magic show, yes, they do have moments of sophomoric juvenile humor, but they can also do some really sophisticated, clever things. Both in terms of the writing and in terms of the tricks and the performances and everything. So, it's always kind of disappointing when they sort of go for the lowest common denominator and they're like, tits, look, we can show tits. But yeah, I mean, the episodes of Bullshit about religion, about the Bible, about alternative medicine, about conspiracy theories, about the 9/11 truth movement. I mean, all of those are excellent, are just terrific. But, they did one on environmentalism that I didn't really agree with. They did one on the Americans with Disabilities Act, which just baffles me. That's a libertarian thing. That's like, the Americans with Disabilities Act is a bad thing, and that's sort of a libertarian. Like, we don't need the government telling people where they can park. And, I'm a handicapped person, and I don't need the government to tell me where I can park, and we should just let the market sort these things out. That's just libertarian horseshit to me. I completely disagree with that. I completely reject that. I will say this about Penn and his libertarianism, though. When I have heard him talk about it in mixed company, let's say, with other people who are not of a libertarian persuasion, he is probably, of all the prominent libertarians that I'm familiar with, he's probably the coolest about it and the least strident about it. When someone else asserts, let's say if someone else asserts a position that is progressive or liberal or whatever, Penn won't just roll over and say, okay, whatever. I mean, he'll argue, he'll support his position, but at the end of the day, he seems okay with the fact that there are people who don't agree with his philosophy, that there are people who are more liberal, there are people who see more of an active role for government in society. Whereas a lot of libertarians, especially a lot of libertarians on the internet, a lot of younger libertarians, are way, way strident about it. They're very fundamentalist about their libertarianism. And if you're not a libertarian, then there must be something wrong with it. You're just an idiot. You just haven't educated yourself. You're blah, 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 blah. And Penn usually doesn't seem like that. I mean, he advocates for his position very strongly, but he doesn't seem as strident and as fundamentalist and as judgmental of non-libertarians as many libertarians unfortunately do seem. So yeah, and obviously I'm a huge fan of Penn and Teller as magicians, in addition to liking them for Bullshit and for Penn's speaking out on atheism and things like that. I just think Penn and Teller are great. I'm huge fans of theirs. Hey, here's another Penn and Teller question from Ahoyerno. Last Off Monday Ramble, you mentioned Penn and Teller. Which of their revealing tricks do you like most and why? Both the sawing a woman in halves and the nail gun routines are beautiful reveals, in my opinion. Yeah, I like both of those tricks, and I also like the one, I can't think of what it's called, but it's the one where they do the trick first, and it's Teller, his different body parts. It's a version of the old trick where it looks like the person in the box is being taken apart. They take the box apart in pieces, and then they spread the different sections of the box out on the stage and open one part and there's his hand, and open one part and there's his head. They do a version of that trick with Teller being the person being segmented in the box, and then they do it with the stage turned around so you can see how he's doing it and how he's sort of sliding around and moving from one spot to another to make it look like he's been sectioned into different separate parts. And that's really clever and really well done, and a really great physical performance from Teller to see how smooth he is and how quick he has to be and how flexible he has to be and just how cleverly it's laid out. I like that one. I also like one that they did on one of their TV shows. I forget which one it is. I think it might have been on The Unpleasant World of Penn and Teller, a show they did. I think it was a Showtime show they had back in the 90s. And the big final illusion was Teller being run over by a truck, like a big 18-wheeler, a big semi-truck. It ran Teller over. And then after they did the trick, they showed you exactly how they did it. And it had to do with counterweights on the side of the truck that the camera never saw, and fake tires running Teller over. And I thought it was it wasn't quite as elegant, as beautiful as the tricks you mentioned or the one I just described, but it was so clever and so well done. And I really, really like that one too. Nuno Uno 001, what do you think about Steven Spielberg? I think Steven Spielberg is an incredibly talented filmmaker. I have nothing but praise for him as an artist, as a stylist, as a manipulator of emotion, as a crafter of suspense. I mean, I think he's just incredible. Actually, recently, Jason with a D and I, on our show on his YouTube channel, the Late Seating Movie Review, we reviewed Jaws, and a lot of my thoughts about Spielberg you can see in that video. I would recommend, if you haven't watched that, to go to Jason with a D's YouTube channel and watch that video. I haven't liked all of his films. He does have, at least in the past, he has had tendencies toward the sentimental. He has indulged in schmaltz and sentimentalism enough for 2 or 3 directors. I mean, Hook by itself has enough cornball and schmaltz for an entire year's worth of major releases from a Hollywood movie. It's just one of the corniest, schmaltziest, most saccharine films I've ever seen. And he does have those tendencies, but then he also has the capacity to be incredibly gritty and rough and clean and fearless. I mean, just think about this. The same director who made Jaws, who made Close Encounters of the Third Kind, who made Raiders of the Lost Ark, made Schindler's List and Saving Private Ryan. And I think Saving Private Ryan is a lesser film to Schindler's List, but still, nonetheless, these incredibly serious, emotionally raw films are from the same guy who made these wonderful adventures and these wonderful suspense films. So he's an extraordinarily versatile, talented director. I have nothing but respect for him. And you know, he's great at, like I said, at building suspense, at teasing you and then paying it off. That would be an example of not being good at that. Spielberg's really good at it. That was a very ham-handed example, but nonetheless, you know what it means. It means that it's time for
the lightning round. Rapid-fire questions, glib and adequate answers.
Somebody left a comment on the last video that the segues were getting better. I guess I just kind of fucked that, didn't I? Amigdio's back. Steve, what are your thoughts on LeVar Burton's attempt to renew Reading Rainbow as a teaching app? Also, what episode do you remember the most? The one I remember the most was the one that was filmed on the set of TNG. I donated to that Kickstarter. I wish I could have afforded to donate more. I think it's a great idea. I am so thrilled that they made and greatly exceeded their $5 million goal. I think it's awesome. I wish him nothing but the best. Reading Rainbow is one of my favorite shows as a kid, and as an adult looking back, I think it's one of the best children's shows ever. And yeah, I remember the TNG episode very well. I also remember the episode where he went to the wax museum and got the wax version of LeVar Burton made. That's what I remember as well. Der Wunderbar Bar, how far do you think we're away from functioning ocular implants like the ones Geordi got in First Contact? Oh, another LeVar Burton question. A lot closer than the late 24th century. Like, those ocular implants or things like them, I keep expecting to read about that when I prepare to do and now the good news video. I feel like it's coming. In the next few years, we're going to have something very much like that, or at least like some technology that is clearly the first major step toward that. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if we see something very much like that within my lifetime. STS German, question, how many movies on average do you watch per week? Actually, lately not that many, unfortunately. Maybe 2, 3. It depends. I mean, a lot of it is because my schedule with the YouTube channel, my production schedule, I have a lot of videos to shoot and to write and there's just not a whole lot of time to sit down and watch a movie. But yeah, I would guess maybe 2 or 3 a week at this point. Used to be a lot more. When I was like in high school and college, I would watch, so many movies. So many movies. Ragnar 1999. And then one for the lightning round. Wrestling question. Who is your favorite ECW wrestler and why? I lean toward good old RVD, but Sandman is so bad at wrestling and so insane, I just can't help but love him. ECW. Yes, Doc and I didn't do the Wrestling with Wrestling show this week, so I let a wrestling question sneak in. Sorry about that. I'm breaking with wrestling apartheid for 1 week. Favorite ECW wrestler? Lance Storm. I just think he's incredible to watch in the ring. So smooth and poised and just a terrific, terrific wrestler. Second place, probably Jerry Lynn for similar reasons. Nathan Steele, why does Toby Benson cross the road? Oh, there are myriad reasons, Nathan. It could be that he perceives a business opportunity. Could be that he perceives someone who he can exploit. Or an opportunity to hone his Krav Maga skills in a real-world scenario. There are numerous possibilities for why Toby Benson would cross the road. He also, maybe somebody on that side of the road just dropped $1. Xander Patton. But did I really have to ask? No, you didn't. But somebody did. And you know what, Xander? Yeah, I'm glad it was you. I'm glad it was you. Noble Runner. What do you think of people who announce their unsubscription from a channel? Do they think someone's going to talk them out of it, or what? I don't know if that's what they think. I think they think that it matters to the person who put up the video. And if the person who put up the video is me, it doesn't matter. It's the most impotent and pointless declaration you could possibly make. I'm unsubscribing. Okay, well, good for you. I hope you'll be happier this way. Like, I do not give a shit. And it's very difficult for me to fathom why anyone else who is a YouTube producer would give a shit. McG413, dude, what the fuck is wrong with you? Sunrise, A Song of Two Humans, was F.W. Murnau, not Fritz Lang. Yes, I know. That was purely a slip of the tongue. I thought I was saying F.W. Murnau. I went back and watched the video, and you're right, I did say that Fritz Lang directed that, and it was definitely F.W. Murnau. It's one of the most beautiful films ever made, and it was totally F.W. Murnau who directed that movie. That was just a brain fart. I meant to say, I thought I was saying F.W. Murnau. So, there you go. Thank you for the correction. Hey, that's it for the questions. Before I get out of here, I want to do a shout-out, and the shout-out this week goes to an awesome channel by a guy who not only produces great content in his own right, but was one of the Trolling with Logic hosts who hosted my hour on the awesome, totally fun, and very successful Trolling with Logic charity show last weekend. And it's BigLundi. BigLundi is a great guy. He did such a great job co-hosting my hour along with Angry Pumpkin. They both did a great job, but I'm singling out BigLundi because he kind of took the lead. He makes videos about philosophy. He has a really excellent video that he put up a couple of months ago about rape culture. He made a video last year in response to a video I made where I mentioned what a waste of time I thought it was for people to pray for victims of the Boston Marathon bombing. And he actually brought up, in responding to me in this video, brought up a really interesting point that I hadn't really considered before, that even though prayer doesn't really make a difference the way people who pray mean it to, like it doesn't cause God to change people's lives, it is a way of expressing that you are concerned about people and that you care about people and that you are thinking about people. And maybe for people who are not in a position to financially contribute to a cause or to take any positive action, they can at least put something positive out there and at least let people know that they are in their thoughts and that they're thinking about them and that they are sympathetic to them and they support them. And that's not nothing. And I hadn't thought that before. And it's a good point. I still think that prayer is a waste of time, generally speaking. But nonetheless, BigLundi brought up a point that I hadn't considered, and kudos to him for that. And it was a really good video that he said that in. And just his content in general is just really strong and really great. And he did a great job hosting me on the Trolling with Logic show, and he gets the shout out this week. BigLundi. Check out his channel, criminally undersubbed. See if it's your cup of tea, and subscribe and watch his stuff if you like it as much as I do, because he is totally worth it. Well, that's it for this week. I will be back next week to do this all over again, provided, of course, that you ask me some questions. Not necessarily all of you, but some of you. Ask me some questions that I can answer next time. Leave a comment on this video and ask me a question for the next video. Ask me anything about anything. Nothing is too serious, nothing is too silly, and I will answer as many of them as I possibly can in the next video. So until then, take care everybody, and I'll see you.